Thanks everyone for coming. And I'm Steve McClure, State Senator, and I represent the 54th District here in Illinois. And the reason that we're having this press conference and the reason why I filed Senate Bill 98 is because of a terrible incident that happened in my district. And when I became aware of it, I looked into the laws of our state as it relates to sexual assault in schools, as it relates to ensuring that our kids are safe across the state. And I realized that our laws need to change. And did you realize, because I didn't, that right now, if a student brings a pair of brass knuckles to class, they are automatically expelled for a year. But if you sexually assault a student at school, there is no automatic expulsion for a year. And ever since these instances happened, and ever since I filed this legislation, people have been reaching out to me, and not just other members in the community, but also members of the General Assembly. And I'm finding that many people are concerned that there are instances taking place where schools are not reporting to the parents what's happening, and in fact, they're trying to sweep it under the rug in some cases, which is very troubling, because right now, a lot of people are concerned about gun violence in schools, and they should be concerned about that. But nobody is talking about something that's really prevalent as well, which is sexual assaults, and they're much more prevalent in schools right now than gun violence is. So with that, I would like to call Ashley Peden, and she's going to tell her story.
Can you spell your first and last name, please?
Sure, it's Ashley, and then Peden is P-E-D-E-N.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you. My name is Ashley Peden. I'm here with my husband, Chad, and his support. For over a decade now, I have been a proud public school educator here in Springfield. I'm a mother of two, and for the past year now, I've been serving as an advocate for the safety of all of our students. My purpose for speaking today is to share the experience that my family has gone through with the Taylorville school community. After hearing what we've gone through and had to endure over the past year, I feel strongly that you too will want to help support Senator McClure in pushing forward with Senate Bill 98. For context, from late January to early February of last year, my daughter, 10 at the time, was a victim of a week-long string of admitted sexual assaults. The assaults occurred while she was riding the school bus home from school and while departing from the bus at the bus stop. The sexual assaults were admittedly committed by an older student, 14 at the time, who did not have any form of relationship with my daughter previous to the assaults. He had admitted to not even knowing her name. Each day that passed, the assaults became progressively more aggravated, and the final assault included my daughter being chased away from the bus, running as fast as she could to get away, being thrown violently to the ground, and having her mouth covered so that she couldn't yell for help, and for the final time, penetration occurred. It was after this final assault that my daughter confided in the adults, and we reported the assaults. The moment that we became aware of the assaults, we informed the police, and the following day we were able to obtain an emergency order of protection. We hand-delivered the order of protection to the principal of the school that both my daughter and the other student attended. The principal assured us that this was going to be handled appropriately and that we didn't have anything to worry about for any future assaults. The principal created, and I put it in air quotes, a safety plan that would ensure that my daughter and the other students wouldn't come in contact with the other student would not come in contact with each other. For the sake of time, I'm just going to shorten the version of the safety plan, and it was that the 8th grade student would remain in the 8th grade hall and not enter the designated area that the 5th grade students were in the building. The 8th grade student would use a different bus that transports the kindergarten through 4th grade students, and that my daughter would still be remaining on the bus that transports 5th through 12th grade students. The buses would stagger their arrival times so the two students wouldn't cross paths at the bus stop. This safety plan was shared with the bus company, my daughter's 5th grade teacher, and office staff. No one else knew of the assaults. No one else knew of the safety plan. No one was keeping the students safe from future assaults occurring. I'm sharing this with you to provide transparency of how the sexual assaults are being occurred and or how they're handling and they are currently being handled in our schools. The protocols that are used are continuously allowing students to be victimized. This safety plan did nothing to keep my daughter and the other students safe. It was just merely to keep my daughter and the other student from coming in contact with each other, and we already had an order of protection to uphold that. For 3 weeks, this safety plan was the only means of protection offered from the school district. After several meetings with several different levels of administration and multiple court orders, the other student was finally removed from the public school setting and sent to an alternative school. Once my daughter was finally gifted the peace of mind of knowing that the other student that assaulted her would no longer be at school or on the bus, she began to re-attend school and start to piece her life together. Never did we imagine that we would again have to advocate for this student to not ride the bus or attend public schools the following school year. But on August 1st of 2024, I received a phone call asking that my daughter switch buses this year and she could ride the K through 4th grade bus as a 6th grader, and that he could ride the 5th through 12th grade bus as a 9th grader, and then also attend public school. My family had again had to advocate for the safety of all students, and through court orders was able to make the bus stop an area where the other student was prohibited from being at. Since the public school bus wasn't an option for the other student, the family didn't have alternative ways to transport him to and from school, so the family agreed to send him back to the alternative school so that he could receive transportation on a bus from the alternative school. It was never the school that was advocating for the safety of students. Yet the lack for safety of all students has been a concern of mine from the very beginning. So much that at one point I was asked, "Are you worried about your daughter or the other students?" To which I quickly replied, "I'm worried about every single one of them, aren't you?" I will conclude with this. We have laws where a student gets expelled for bringing a weapon on school grounds. But what about cases like this when the student's body is the weapon? This boy continuously brought his weapon to school, on the bus, and to the bus stop. This is not acceptable. This is not ensuring safety for all students, and until stricter laws are in place, this is going to continue to happen. It is time now to make a change. Please don't wait for something to happen to somebody that you know. Learn through my family's experience that we need to come together and support Senate Bill 98. Representative CD Davidsmeyer.
Thank you. I'm State Representative C.D. Davidsmeyer. I represent the 100th District. All are part of 10 counties on the central western portion of the state of Illinois. I want to thank Ashley and her husband and their daughter, their family, for their courage, for bringing this forward. Because since then, I know that others have come forward and said, this isn't just happening in Taylorville. It's happening elsewhere. As a father of a freshman and a 7th grader, I want to make sure this does not happen to anyone else, right? And that there is proper guidance on what happens should this happen again. Schools need to know what the expectation is. And it's not only for the victim, it's not punishment for the individual who committed the crime. It's to protect all of our kids and to ensure that the people who committed the crimes get the help that they need. Like I said, kids are dealing with enough right now in their daily lives, whether they have the support at home or don't have the support at home. It's amazing what kids have to deal with. And so they need these supports and they need this direction directly from the authorities, the people of authority, the individuals who we trust to keep our kids safe, who are the school districts. And it's not just while they're at school, it's while they're on the bus, it's while they're going to the bus stop. It's watching when the kids leave the bus stop and head off to their homes, right? We're ensuring safety of children. With that, I want to welcome up Carrie Ward from ICASA, Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carrie Ward. I'm the CEO with the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault. I am pleased to be invited to join everyone here today, and I want to echo Rep. Davidsmeyer's thanks to Ashley and Chad and on behalf of their daughter as well for having the courage to come forward and to demand something that looks different. And I appreciate that Senator McClure and Rep. Davidsmeyer reach out to us at ICASA to look for our support with this bill. I am proud to say it is a bill that we do support, and that we think it's really important that schools be held accountable for the students in their charge. And when students have been sexually assaulted, that they get the support and attention and resources that they need. And I really echo the point that we do take protective measures when students bring weapons like the brass knuckles that Senator McClure mentioned to school, and the penalty for a student sexually assaulting another student looks nothing like that 1 year expulsion. And so I think it's really important that we look at a bill like this. I think that prevention education in schools is something that's really important, and I think follow-up intervention when assaults have happened is important. I know one of the important elements of the work we do at ICASA is to acknowledge that we all know someone who has been sexually assaulted. We don't always know that we know that, and we know how much courage, how much bravery it takes to come forward and acknowledge you were assaulted, especially when the person is older than you or bigger than you or in a different, position of power than you. And so I think it took a lot of courage for their daughter to be able to come forward, and I so appreciate that she had parents who were willing to advocate for her and that we have legislators who were willing to advocate for them, and I encourage support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And I do want to say that Representative Davidsmeyer is going to be filing identical language to Senate Bill 98 in the House, and we're going to go full steam ahead here. We're going to try to get one of these versions passed, and right now we're moving forward with Senate Bill 98. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yep.
With this particular legislation, I know, Carrie, you had mentioned a couple, the surrounding resources and stuff that would be helpful as well, but this legislation seems to be pretty focused on that 1 year expulsion at minimum. How would this go further, or is there plans to go further to try to get some of that? Because I guess just listening to your story, there seems to be the same, after 1 year, there might just be the same situation where it all starts over again, the kid's allowed back into the school, and there's not the next steps, I guess.
So there's a few problems right now. The first issue is that with the expulsion, the school board makes the determination as to what did or didn't happen. And then if they make a determination that a sexual assault occurred, then they have to make the decision to expel the student and then make them go to an alternative school. I would suggest that in that situation, the school board should then say, and as part of your time at this alternative school, you receive treatment and you receive help. And so one of the main things here is putting this before the school board so they can see what the issues are, and I would hope that they would order some resolution here by allowing the student to get treatment. Because what's happening right now is the schools are, in some cases, ignoring these things, not telling the parents, or just making a school bus shift, which then, of course, you've got this student who's a danger to other students just riding a school bus with younger students who could easily be victimized without telling the parents, without telling the students on the bus, or without telling the bus driver what's going on. And so the student first has to accept the fact that they did something wrong. That's the first step in trying to correct the behavior so it doesn't happen again, because we want these people to grow up to be law-abiding, wonderful adults who are productive. But right now, essentially, in this case, and this is not just the only case, CD touched upon it, and I touched upon it a little bit, and I know Ashley even received a phone call from an anonymous teacher talking about a situation that occurred. This is happening all over the state, and these students, in many cases, are not getting any punishment at all. And if you don't know that what you're doing is wrong, you're never going to change your behavior. And staying in these environments with these other students that are vulnerable is a danger to them and a danger to the school system at large.
Was this student criminally charged?
There's a juvenile matter that has been that's moving forward. We can't talk about juvenile cases, obviously, because of confidentiality. But yes, there have been charges in juvenile court.
And this was in Taylorville?
Correct.
And a fifth grader and an eighth grader go to the same building?
Yes, the junior high in Taylorville, We actually live in Stonington, so my daughter rides the bus from Taylorville to Stonington. Stonington co-ops with Taylorville, so we're a part of their school district. The assaults occurred on the Taylorville school bus at the Stonington bus stop, and they do go to the same school. The junior high encompasses 5th through 8th grade. The 5th graders stay in a wing. They have a homeroom teacher. They don't transition. For lack of better words and to make it understandable, it feels like they just didn't have anywhere to put the 5th graders in another building, so they stuck them in there and they just treat them like elementary kids in a junior high building. But the junior high students, the 6th through 8, do transition as a normal junior high.
If I could ask a quick follow-up, just for this situation, how this proceeded after the fact. You made a point of saying that the student admitted to doing this.
Yes.
Was there going to be any action regarding him being moved to an alternative school if there was no admitting to it? Or was that the key to that happening when it came to the school board and their decision-making process?
The student had admitted the assaults before being moved to the alternative school. Does that answer your question?
What would constitute like a sexual assault under this bill? Like what did the school administration have to make a finding that a sexual assault occurred and then they can move forward with discipline, or how would that process work?
So the sexual assault would be the same definition in criminal law as to what a sexual assault is. As far as what the school board would make to determine that, they would have to have a hearing on the matter, and they would have to notify the accused person's parents, and obviously the student and the victim's parents and the victim, and they would have to have a fact-finding hearing to make a determination as to what happened.
Do you have any Democratic lawmakers wanting to sign on to this bill too?
We just got out of the gate here. I did speak to some on the floor yesterday about the bill, and I certainly seem to get support. This is actually the second bill involving school safety for kids. Representative Davidsmeyer and I passed a bill last year that was signed into law that allows for abused students to continue to go to their same school. And so this is kind of in that same area where some horrible situation happened in my district at that time, and we passed a law to correct it. And we're hoping to pass this law to address this situation as well this year.
3 weeks that transpired between the incident and or the reporting and his transfer, is that an acceptable period, an administrative period that it takes, or is there anything in the bill to address that?
There's nothing in the bill that addresses timelines. It just addresses the expulsion. The first step, I think, in recognizing how serious these cases are is we need to show in state law that a sexual assault is as bad as it gets in a school. And so that needs to be reflected in law. Right now, it's not reflected at all. And so the concern, is particularly in this case, is that why should the parents have to go get an attorney to get an order of protection to just force a school to protect its students? That is unacceptable. And as Ashley said, she's a teacher herself, but to take time off to go through the court system because the school is not going to discipline a student who's actively sexually assaulting another student. And my understanding, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but there was evidence that was on the bus itself. Obviously, we know buses have cameras, and they are monitoring these students all the time. So why should they have to go through all of this when the school doesn't seem to react to the situation to protect other students?
And if, what I, don't let me put words in your mouth, Ashley, but what I heard you saying was that more people, the entire staff should have known about this situation.
Yeah.
The safety plan.
So maybe I could speak on that, like as an educator. So I have myself been a part of a situation where all staff needed to know about something about a student. It was as simple as an email saying, hey, student A should not be in the presence of student B. We need to keep them apart. It can be very generic. It doesn't need to say what they did, but everybody needs to know this person needs to be secluded from this person. This person shouldn't be out of sight of adults to keep everybody safe. It could have been just as generic as that. I asked for it to be just as generic as that, and I was not granted that.
Can I say something really quick? I think that it's important to recognize that this bill may be a first step, right? We are saying that we are watching. We know this is happening in school districts. It cannot be swept under the rug anymore. That is what we're saying here. We are giving them direction on what to do. If they need further direction, I think the individuals up here would be happy to push them in the direction that we believe they need to go. But right now, we're saying you can no longer ignore it.
That's what I'm
It is a
hearing,
problem.
that the
Correct.
school was trying to keep it.
Correct.
I'll take care of it, we'll take care of it inside.
Yes.
It's our
Not
family.
even notifying parents. And that's absolutely unheard of and ridiculous.
Talking about the school board kind of sweeping it under the rug, with this new law, does it stop school boards from sweeping it under the rug? Because, sexual assault is already something very difficult for a lot of people that have, had to suffer experience from it to actually come out and be open about it. So
Yeah.
is there anything?
It's certainly tough for an individual to come forward to begin with, right? And we recognize that. But this says that this is a serious crime. It's a serious infraction. We're going to put this at the same level as other types of violence, whether it be firearms or whatever it may be. This was held to a lower standard, and there's no reason that sexual assault should be held to a lower standard than even bringing a firearm to school.
And to clarify, the bill language isn't specifying that if a student is expelled, they have to attend treatment. You're just suggesting that the school board should allocate that?
I believe they absolutely should. I mean, the goal is not just to punish the child, but to make sure that if the child's going to end up with students and other people somewhere else. So the goal of our entire system is education, and that is part of education, is teaching them how to become a better person and not have these issues.
Is that in the bill language, or is that a specific?
It is not.
No, I mean, and I would just say that if the school board has to make a determination about sexual assault, they have to have a hearing and hear from both sides and look at all of the evidence. They're in a position to, after that, decide what happens to the student who committed the sexual assault. And so I would suggest that in those situations, they would put treatment as part of that student's plan in the alternative school. Right now, there's silence to sexual assaults as far as punishment, and what's happening right now is silence in these schools as well, because they're not telling the parents in some cases, and other students aren't even aware of what's happening, and that's a danger to them as well.
So, after this happened, the school did a safety plan. They said, 8th grader, stay away from 5th graders. They put the 8th grader on a different bus. It took 3 weeks to send him to the alternative school. And then after summer, well, we want to bring them back into the regular school and, change buses again. What's the worst part of all this?
Personally, what's the worst part of this? I think the worst part of this is, like, on a personal standpoint, it made me question if I needed to continue to be an educator. I went to my admin and I said, please tell me what we would do in this situation, because if this is how we're going to handle it, I can no longer work here. So as an educator, the students are my utmost importance. That's why I'm there. So as an educator, I couldn't continue on knowing that safety isn't as important as how intelligent you are. So for personally, that was me. But in the grand scheme of things, I want to go back to that my child and this child were strangers. They did not know each other. They did not have conversations previous to this. So what is the next stranger that is going to be affected by this? Knowing that you're continuously allowing this child back in schools, you are setting him up to pick his next target. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
Well, we heard up here yesterday that the governor coddles criminals and that he doesn't care about the rest of Illinois other than to make things nice for criminals. Is that the situation in Taylorville schools where they really don't want to deal with it? We're not equipped to deal with it. We don't have a plan. We don't know what to do, so we're going to do nothing. As I say at home, we just don't want to F with this, and it's something besides F. I mean, how and why would the schools allow this to happen? What's their motivation to handle it the way they did?
I can't speak for the school. All I can do is look at the behavior that happened and what their response was. And it wasn't until, and correct me if I'm wrong, but until Ashley and her husband got involved with attorneys and juvenile matters that the school did anything. And the school did not say, okay, you're going to go to this alternative school to punish the student for this offense or these offenses. They did it because they couldn't really comply with the court orders anymore unless the student just went to a different school. So it's outrageous. I can't explain that, and Dave, you'd have to ask that school why they did what they did, because it seemed to be a major...
Yeah, I just continuously heard that everybody has the right to a public education, and so then I referred to the code of conduct that they put in effect, and I read in there that everybody has the right to an education until that right infringes upon another person having that same right to their free, a safe and free public education. And so I kept leaning on that, and then that's what they also kept leaning on, that both children had the right to a public education.
And when you're looking at a situation like this, it is a tough decision when you're dealing with kids on any side of an issue. And I think ignoring a problem and hoping it goes away happens way too often. And this is saying we are no longer going to ignore that problem, right? We're not going to allow school districts or whoever is in that position of authority to ignore the problem anymore.
This seems like a common sense plan that should gain bipartisan support. But as you both know, there are Democrats that are against penalty enhancements for many different types of violence. How are you going to work out discussions with the Democrats that are more liberal than others that may be against penalty enhancements of this sort?
I wouldn't classify this as a penalty enhancement. This is a safety enhancement.
Right.
And the issue is not, and we've talked about this privately, the issue is not trying to go after a particular student to punish them. The issue is number one, protecting all the students at the school, and number two, making sure that this student recognizes they did something wrong and then goes to an alternative education center where they can get treatment and get help to get them on the better path. Because right now, because of several laws that have passed in this state, teachers are afraid to punish students or treat them any differently, even when they do horrific things. And so this is a step in the right direction, but I wouldn't classify this as punishment. This is a school safety issue. We've got to protect all the students in the school, and we've got to make sure that this person recognizes they did something wrong and they need to go to a school where they can get treatment to get themselves on a better path. That's all this is about, because right now in the current environment, it is very detrimental to victims, and it's very detrimental even to the person who's doing these things because they don't recognize it's wrong and they're not getting the help that they need to get on the better path.
And Carrie, just curious, have you seen other states implement plans like this that became law to protect the students?
So I can't say that I offhand know of another state that specifically did this, but what I can say about is that one of the reasons why ICASA could sign on to a bill like this is what we looked at is we are about survivor advocacy and supporting and assisting survivors. And what was compelling to us was to look at an existing a method in which schools respond to a certain kind of behavior. You know, the example of bringing weapons to school, looking at a certain kind of behavior and a way in which policies don't address another kind of behavior, that being sexual assault that's harmful to other students. And so being able to say something that acknowledges this behavior applies a current existing punishment or a penalty that exists in the school's policy already, and saying this too should at least equal that type of response is something we can absolutely get behind. And one of the things we recognize is there are schools that take sexual assault very seriously, and there are schools that have policies in place that do respond. And there are schools that, when Ashley asked the question to her school about how might we handle this, and that gave her an assessment as to whether she could continue to work there, I think there are schools that could respond to that in a way that would make us all feel a lot more comfortable than the response that happened in this instance. And I think what we don't want to see moving forward is more examples of this, where a student who was assaulted, that we are aware of was assaulted, didn't get the support that was needed. So I do apologize that I don't know the answer to your question regarding the states, but I have thoughts on the other parts of it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.